Today we have the latest updates on Jack Eichel, Vladimir Tarasenko, and a couple members of the Predators, including Filip Forsberg and Mattias Ekholm. We also have some signings to discuss as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about here today. First up, we have a few smaller news items to talk about when it comes to some signings and some hirings here as well. First up, I wanted to acknowledge the former NHL player Marc Savard, who unfortunately had his career ended much abruptly and shorter than he would have liked, and that really deserved due to concussions and some devastating hits, which kind of took his career away from him. Has now been named the head coach of the OHL's Windsor Spitfires. So that's great to see. I know Savard's gotten more involved in the game of hockey in the last couple of years. He launched Project 91, which is great in order to kind of help do some fundraising for concussion research. I know he even had a YouTube channel there for a while where he was doing like taping jobs for hockey sticks, which was kind of great to see. His take on a lot of NHL tape jobs in that regard. I believe he worked briefly with the St. Louis Blues as an assistant coach. And now here he is at head coach for Windsor. So I think that's going to be a terrific hire. I always thought he was one of the smarter players in the game. Certainly one of my favorite guys to watch from the early 2000s, especially between time in Atlanta, Calgary, especially in Boston, when he did so well. So nice to see that. We also had news that the New York Rangers have formally announced the remaining members of their coaching staff to kind of round things out here for head coach Gerard Gallant. No big surprise, Mike Kelly's among them. Of course, he's worked with Gallant quite extensively, so obviously he will remain with them. Of course, Gord Murphy also joins the squad, as well as Jim Midgley as well. So that rounds out the NHL Rangers coaching staff here that'll be working with Gerard Gallant. So, like I said, no big surprises there when it comes to Mike Kelly. He and Gallant have pretty much been joined at the hip for an extensive period of time. Now, a few other signings as well. I know NHL forward Valtteri Filip, should we say, former NHL player who recently played for the Red Wings, has signed overseas and will be playing this year over in Switzerland. So he will not be an NHL player for this coming season, at least. I'm not sure if he'll ever get another opportunities later into his career, so maybe he plays a little bit in Europe before officially hanging them up. We also had word from David Krejci, who's playing this year in the Czech Republic. I know there was some questions being asked to him when he did his official media availability over there, asking if there was any truth to the rumors that maybe he could be heading back to the Bruins for the spring. So I know there were some that thought maybe he could be a late season addition, but he put any end to that, saying no, he's committed to playing in the Czech Republic for the entire year, and that there's really no plans at all to rejoin the Bruins, at least for this season. So I don't think we can completely rule out him going back to the NHL, playing for Boston. Really hard to say, but for the coming year at least, he's committed and staying where he is. We also had word that the St. Louis Blues have signed a first-round pick from the 2021 NHL Draft, Zachary Bolduc. He gets his 3-year entry-level contract. Of course, the Quebec-born center iceman was taken number 17 overall in this year's draft. It looks like a pretty solid prospect there, so good to see him officially get his contract all inked up here with the Blues organization. And the San Jose Sharks have also made a signing as well. They've signed a 4th-round pick back from 2018, Jesper Weatherby, who's a pretty big, good-sized center iceman, 6'4", 23 years old now. He's played the last 3 years for the University of North Dakota, and he's officially done his collegiate career and signs with the Sharks. Because of his age, he only gets a 2-year entry-level contract, so we'll see where he ends up. I would imagine he'll likely have to play for the Barracuda in the AHL for at least the first season, see where things go. He was really, I guess, never a real big producer at the NCAA. His last year was his best year, which is kind of to be expected as you get older, more mature, and get more experience. It kind of goes hand in hand. So we'll see what things develop and then see how he transitions to the pro game. But nice to see the Sharks get an older draft pick from 3 years ago under contract. Of course, he would have been older than usual being drafted at that point. He would have been 20 years old at the time. So we'll see how things work out for him in San Jose. And before we jump into the trade section of today's content, I do want to take a minute and pause to acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Now, before we jump into today's trade talk, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers, where you can get 20% off and free shipping on all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here, even again with the skin-safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching our promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. Of course, yesterday, if you didn't watch the video, there's also a post on our community tab here outlining the new merchandise, new t-shirts that were launched. And of course, we have these hoodies that have been selling at a pretty high rate lately. I must say that the merchandise sales have gone up a lot in the month of August, and we do have a promo going to the end of the month. I'll slap the promo code here on the screen quickly so you can see. And like I said, it's also posted on the community tab in case you haven't already had a chance to look at that right now. But if you've already made a purchase, thank you very much. Like I said, sales have been doing extremely well, and I'm very much appreciative of that. Going on to the other part of the content here, the rumor mill, I want to start with the Nashville Predators. There's some talk from Adam Vingan, who covers the Preds for The Athletic, looking at the future of a couple of their guys, including Mattias Ekholm and Filip Forsberg. Now, both are entering the final year of their contract, and he kind of discusses the future of each of these players. He figures that based on the knowledge of the situation, there's a really good chance Mattias Ekholm will re-up and sign an extension here. Now, at one point, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that he was going to be traded, and then we had other reports after they kind of had a late season charge made the playoffs that it was pretty much a given that he was going to re-sign. And at this point, neither of those scenarios has happened, but it's looking like a contract extension is more and more likely. Vingan kind of predicts a 4-year deal somewhere in the $6 million per year range. The 32-year-old defenseman would take him to age 36 and kind of get him towards the latter end of his career. I mean, he's been a pretty solid, pretty consistent defenseman for them for quite some time now. And even though David Poile's got this team going through, I personally call it a bit of a rebuild, but he's calling it like a competitive rebuild. So it's, kind of an acceleration mode according to him. But I ain't totally convinced of that, but we'll see how things go. They do have a lot to look forward to. They do have some good pieces, and I guess we'll see if they can build off of last year's second half success. But at the same time, Filip Forsberg might be a different story. Now, many feel that there is a chance he could remain with the Preds and sign an extension, but the only problem in this scenario is that Forsberg is likely going to be able to get a lot more money in the open market, and the Preds just might not have the appetite to go where the market could take him. So essentially, Forsberg, who's probably arguably their most talented forward, their best pure goal scorer, especially with the departure of Arvidsson. I know Arvidsson and many of the guys have had down years recently, but still at this point, he's a guy that's been a tad bit inconsistent and battled some injuries, but he's still a very talented guy. He's younger than Ekholm, 27 years old, still very much in the prime playing years of his career. The next few years should be able to get probably the most highest end production out of him, at least theoretically speaking. And the article goes on to reference that he can fetch $8 million on the open market. So the Preds may not want to go there. They've already got a couple of $8 million players that they're not happy with, and Matt Duchene or Ryan Johansson that they'd like to move on from if possible. And if they get themselves tied up in another $8+ million contract in Forsberg, and let's say things don't go the way that they're hoping for, or he does decline sooner than expected, then they could be in a real situation to get a bit of an albatross contract. Now, I know when they traded Arvidsson, he was not happy and even voiced his displeasure on social media. So I do wonder what his appetite is to re-sign, although, like I said, the Vingan and other reporters I've seen talk about this recently seem to indicate that it's decent, but I guess we'll see. But to me, I would not be surprised, based on what Vingan's saying, in my own personal opinion, that the situation with Forsberg is drawn out a little bit longer. And maybe if he goes into the season without a contract extension, it could end up, playing it out, and maybe he becomes a trade deadline target for many other NHL teams. I'm not entirely convinced Nashville will be a playoff team this year. That maybe they will be, but they're going to be in tough. and I do think that the odds of them missing are pretty high compared to making it. And if that's the case, then Forsberg could be a goner. Now, when it comes to the St. Louis Blues, it looks as though, according to Andy Strickland, they have their eye on defenseman Scott Mayfield of the New York Islanders. He's reporting that there is some interest in the defenseman. And of course, we know that it's been rumored for some time that the Islanders have keen interest in Vladimir Tarasenko, who has been wanting a trade and wants out of the Blues organization. So could we see them end up being involved in a trade for one another? Well, certainly wouldn't be straight up 1-for-1. We can say that with a lot of certainty. But Mayfield's certainly a defenseman that gained a lot of attention in the playoffs for some really strong play. He's got 2 years left on his deal, only $1.45 million. He's still only 28 years old, so there's a lot of appeal to his game based on what he brings. Not overly expensive, will probably fit very nicely on the Blues' third pair. Obviously, they do have some young prospect D that I would imagine they'd probably want to have given an opportunity to grab one of those spots as well, but only time will tell. And they could end up moving on from another like higher-ranked defenseman. But I mean, they have guys like Krug and Falk and Scandella. And Parayko playing ahead of him. There is some uncertainty around Parayko's future because he's in his final year of his contract as well. So we don't know if they can get him re-signed or how that's going to work out. But certainly a situation that if the Islanders are indeed going to trade for Tarasenko, it's going to have to take more than Mayfield. But that could be one of the pieces if the interest is legit, like we're hearing from Strickland. Now, it's been reported before that it's likely going to take another more experienced forward, maybe a guy like a Josh Bailey would have to be included going to St. Louis. Of course, Mayfield also is from St. Louis as well, so it's certainly a situation where it'd be like a homecoming for him. So obviously that could be an appeal if he's going to be moved. It probably would be high in his list of preferential places to go. Not that he'd have any say in it, but it would certainly make him pleased if he's going to leave Long Island. So at this point, though, we don't know really where things stand. It looks as though the Blues kind of set themselves a price, just like we saw in other situations. It hasn't been met, so Tarasenko's not traded. The Islanders have been absolutely, under wraps, under the radar, quiet. Like we still don't know the confirmed contracts for Palmieri, Cizikas, Beauvillier, Sorokin. Like we assume all these guys are getting signed because they haven't gone elsewhere. So, I mean, the RFAs can't, but still, you know what I mean? Like, Lou's really drugged this out. And early in the offseason, we had reports from Elliot Friedman saying that he's probably dragging this out. He wants to keep secrets so that other teams don't know their full cap situation when it comes to making trades. And they felt he was working on something significant. And it makes sense that he would be, but we still don't know. So there's really not a huge update on the Tarasenko situation, except for the fact that Mayfield is interesting to the Blues and could be included in a package should they get down to business and finally get a deal worked out. Now, lastly, I do want to have an update here on the Jack Eichel situation with the Buffalo Sabres. There's another article from John Vogel in The Athletic talking about the situation. And yes, I know we've talked about Eichel. There's really not a ton of new information here, except for the fact that he's still not having his surgery. He's likely going to be out for the start of the season. And one of the main questions posed to Vogel in this recent article was, do you see the asking price coming down and a more realistic price, being discussed and possibly worked out for trade? And the answer was that he didn't really feel like there was much of anything in regards to negotiating actually taking place. That when it comes to the Eichel situation, they basically set their price. They've had conversations with teams, but at the end of the day, there really hasn't been a whole lot of back and forth going on. So they're not budging, which is why things have not moved along nearly as quickly to get Eichel his new home. Now, he also references in this article that there's just absolutely no way that he can bring him back. So at the end of the day, any team acquiring Eichel is going to have to likely deal with the surgery, which means he's going to be out for the first number of weeks or possibly months to start the season. And at this point, it wouldn't be completely shocking if a deal doesn't get done until the very least training camp. And based on what Vogel's saying, in my own personal opinion here, I think this is going to play out one of two ways. We're either going to see a trade on the eve of training camp right before he's supposed to report, before that pressure point starts to hit, and he'll go off to his new team. They'll put him on LTIR. He'll have his surgery, come back, hopefully as good as new, and continue playing. In 6 to 8 weeks or whatever the recovery is on that surgery he wants to have. Or it's going to be a situation where he's not going to report. They're going to put him on either suspend him, LTIR him, or whatever they're going to have to do. It's going to drag out for a while, and then at some point maybe he gets traded near the deadline or something to that effect. But this situation has potential to continue to get ugly if the asking price is not going to change, because teams don't seem to be willing to pay the asking price here for the Sabres, and something is only as really as valuable as what somebody's willing to pay. And if they don't want to pay the price, he could end up staying. It could get uglier. I guess we'll have to see what happens. But at the end of the day here, the big thing that Vogel pointed out today is that there just really is not much negotiating going on. Adams is content to sit back and just kind of wait and say this, he's made it be known what his price is. And we talked about a couple days ago the teams that are still in the mix, which included, the Calgary Flames, the New York Rangers, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Vegas Golden Knights were still in the mix in some capacity as well. So, unless they come forward with a better offer, the Anaheim Ducks too, a big one, that it's just not going to happen. So, unless teams change their offer, the Sabres are quite content to wait. And some have argued that that's going to backfire. It's hurt his value and all that. And only time will tell, because we don't really know. We can't say with certainty until the deal's done, so we know what's going to Buffalo. So, let me know what your thoughts are, when we're finally going to see this deal take place, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe. Stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.